Good evening. My name is Ajuri Ngilali, and you are most welcome to Africa's Future Leaders. Every year, hundreds of thousands of high-achieving young Africans apply to take part in the Mandela Washington Fellowship, also known as the Young African Leaders Initiative, YALI. While grassroots impact and servant leadership are prioritized above access to official authority and political power, the true strength of young African leaders is in the strength of numbers. Common amongst the young leaders is the recognition that their impact is commensurate with their ability to network with others and to work together to achieve common objectives. On this edition of the program, we take you to Nairobi, Kenya, where several distinguished young African leaders convened a regional summit. As we go into the regional conference proceedings, we are excited to share the insights, stories, and perspectives of these young African leaders as they sit down with us. Young African leaders arrive.
Okay, yeah, sure, yeah.
The East African Regional Conference of Young African Leaders kicks off in Nairobi with a presentation by Nobel Peace Prize nominee Victor Ochen.
I'm indeed humbled and honored to be standing in front of the YALI members. I wish you could imagine how many times I applied and I was never taken up to now. I am not jealous, I want for you. Ladies and gentlemen, although you would want to be a seed for change in the continent, know that it will be personal at some point. And when it gets personal, it gets more complicated. I experienced this myself. Having been born and raised in northern Uganda, without much opportunity, no education, struggling with my own security, my own safety, surviving on 1 meal a day for over 7 years, I was like many of my brothers and sisters I see who are malnourished in the conflict zone today. But there was one particular moment as a leader, from when I was 13 years, I chose to never fight, to never kill anybody. The desperations and sufferings of this world will never stop to come your ways. There was one fateful moment when my own brother was abducted by the Lord Resistance Army. And I missed that abduction by a few minutes. He was taken and unfortunately has not come back up to now. He's one of the tens of thousands of northern Ugandan children who have taken and they have never been accounted for. But to put that aside, as I was doing my work to work and empower young people, mobilize them to build peace, talk about love, solidarity and all that, there was one particular moment when I was doing counseling in a community. I met a young man. And this young man told me a story, how he has lived in captivity and what he did in captivity. And he explained one particular moment when he was operating in my home area. This young man went on to tell me a story of how he conducted an abduction. He didn't know he was talking about my own brother, how he abducted my own brother. I said it on that sometimes it becomes personal. You encounter your own, could be, should have been enemy. But what do? This is what you are going to face in the society. It will be personal at some point, but what do? You might be wondering, what did you do? I looked at the young man, told me the story. I was freaking in my heart. He said, my brother is missing. You explained to me how you have abducted my own brother. As he told the story, I couldn't finish the story. I said, can we cut this story? And he walked home. I drove home, reached home. I wanted to talk to my father. I just found no strength to tell him. I wanted to talk to my twin brother. No, I just went straight to the house. My body was shaking, and I was asking, what do I do with this young man who was abducted? And he took my brother. A day after, I went back to meet him. He didn't know. I didn't tell him that he was talking about my own brother. When I met him, we continued our story. I couldn't finish it again. It was too personal. I told him, can we meet next week? Still wondering, what do I do with him? Should I tell my family members? Should I tell anybody? And I said, if I do that, it's going to spread fire, going to spread hatred. And I don't want to do that. A week after, I went back to him and I told him, I know you're a great man. You're so strong. You've seen too much. But you're just too good. I want to employ you. And he said, I am not educated. I don't even know how to speak English. What kind of organization takes even uneducated people? And I said, I don't care your level of education. All I care is your heart. You have a good heart. You've seen too much. You can do so much for your fellow people. I employed him. I employed my brother's abductor. And not until I did that, I was not at peace with myself. I was not at peace with him. But only when I employed him that I found sense of harmony, sense of relaxation, sense of peace in my heart. So this is how I dealt with my personal encounters. Last week I was meeting with President Robert Mugabe. I was on a panel with President Robert Mugabe, and we were discussing, and he said, we need to give young people opportunity to lead. We need to give them opportunity to lead. But before we do that, they need better education. I said, yeah, Mr. President, thank you. But I told him, said, yes, education is necessary. But we have reached a point where we should educate not only formally, but also informally. Can we educate by being role models, by being exemplary leaders, so that the young people may embrace? I don't want to raise another Mugabe. I want to raise a better Mugabe. That is one. And then, without relationship between me and him, we wouldn't have talked. It's only through relationship that you can tell truth to power, but tell it with love. Tell it with respect. That's where tolerance, understanding, harmony, common ground will be found.
Chairperson of the Young East African Leaders Association addresses young leaders.
We've grown as humans, as leaders. We've become more focused and committed to the development of our countries and the continent. We used to be strong, but now we are a family of warriors who work hard side by side. Our goal of a united, peaceful, prosperous, and well-developed Africa is a reality. As we, the young leaders, be connected to our passion, our hopes and dreams have triumphed over hardships and obstacles. During our time in the different institutes of the United States, We shared precious moments that we will cherish in our hearts for the rest of our lives. We inspired each other by the amazing work that everyone is doing back in their countries. From those who are fighting violence against women, to those who risk their lives in conflict zones, working tirelessly on reconciliation and peace building, to the entrepreneurs who are building innovative, sustainable solutions every single day. And we remember our dear fellows who devoted their days and nights to reform the public sector. We have never been prouder to witness and be part of the change that you built, that we built as Mandela Washington Fellows. My dear fellows, I believe that we are the change we want to see. And the spark that ignites positive change begins with an individual. So thank you, my fellows, for strengthening my belief.
She sits down with us.
One of the highlights of my life, and I'm very proud of, I've been the first female mechanical engineer in Sudanese sugar factories workshops since its establishment in the 1960s. So this was like an achievement and a message for all the women in Sudan that you can go places that, you know, for society and other people, they think that they are not allowed to be there. And also I'm actively involved in youth, women's and girls empowerment activities and organizations. I was a capacity building consultant for the Sudanese Young Leader program. We train young Sudanese between the age of 18 and 30 on different topics like leadership, community mobilization, community engagement, to have more actively leaders and to take the journey, you know, in developing Sudan. After the YALI, I started my own initiative, it's Sisters. And in my initiative, I work with women and girls in Sudan. So I launched like a Facebook group. I have 14,000 followers. Then I started to do like some training workshop. I'm trying to work with young women in Sudan to build, you know, their confidence and to show them that they can go out of their comfort zones. Also, I train them on interview skills and how to apply for jobs, because, you know, as women, we need to equip ourselves more, you know, like to compete in the job market. So this is one of the challenges that we have here, we have in Sudan and in Africa.
In what ways has the networking helped you to kind of take your initiative to the next level? Are there any areas or any fellows that you've worked with that have been able to kind of work with you in synergy to move a common agenda forward?
What I love about this YALI, in everything, that if you need help, if you need to ask a question, you can just, you know, type a message on the WhatsApp group, you know, because from every university we have a WhatsApp group for the fellows. From that university we have a bigger Facebook group for all the 1,000 fellows. You can just drop a question and you can find a response, you know, in a minute of, in seconds. As we know, the situation in Africa is not that easy. Even sometimes when you feel that you are about to quit, you can just, you know, SMS your friend, like, I'm going through this, how I can do it, or I need your help. So yes, so it's helpful from different ways, not only, you know, at personal level and at professional level.
The stories out of the Sudan generally, for the layman, usually what they hear is crisis or famine or drought or whatever the case may be. You offer a different narrative of the Sudan. And I want to ask you, when you think about the challenges facing your country, what is it that you hope for the future of Sudan? And what role would you like to play in that future?
I do agree with you. I think that many people, they just, you know, hear like about the negative stuff in Sudan. But actually in Sudan, you can find like, you know, some people who are doing a really very good job, especially, you know, for the young people of Sudan. They are trying their best to change the narratives. And women in Sudan now, they are doing very well. You can find like engineers, lawyers, scientists, every discipline, you can find women. And it's a good point that we need like to work more on reflecting the positive side. And for me, as a young leader from Sudan, of course, I hope for a united, peaceful, prosperous, Sudan. Because for me, Sudan is rich. Sudan has all what it takes to be a leading country. We have the natural resources, we have the people, we have everything. But we lack, of course, leadership and management. And I think this is where we as young leaders, we can play a major role.
Uganda's retail industry is being revolutionized by one young man who shares his insights on leadership and innovation. Present with us on the program is a young tech entrepreneur, a retailer, and a leader from Uganda. Julius, you're very welcome to the program.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm humbled and privileged to join you.
One of the major advances in the African continent today has been the ICT revolution. For a long time, the perception has been, and in most cases, the reality has been that African countries have been behind in terms of facilities, infrastructure, etc. And we've seen information and communication technology in some ways bridge the gap. As a young leader in this field, can you talk a little bit about what you have seen in terms of the impact of ICT on the youths and also on the communities across Uganda?
With that, I think let me use myself as an example. I'm going to tell you a story about my startup. Majority of the middle income people, but those are mostly our target customers, do face this problem of too much traffic jam, lack of where to park when they go for wherever they are going to shop, and sometimes they don't even know where they are going to find specific products that they need. So it hits me, what if I offer it as a service to people, in return they pay me? And that born Your Home, a company that I run. It's basically an e-commerce platform that belongs to the IT sector. So Your Home, basically what we do is we integrate big chain stores onto one platform and give a customer choice to shop from their loyal store or from their favorite store. And then what we do is deliver what they've ordered for. Now, the beauty about it, we sell to them these products with no markup on. It's the exact shelf price. And we will charge them a handling and delivery fee. And when these people make their orders and then we deliver to them, like I've mentioned to you, we do charge them handling and delivery fee. Now, that's what's able to pay us as the young people who are working in Your Home. We earn a decent living. That enables us to cater for our bills. And then, because I told you it's twofold now, the other part, it's helping someone who's out there frustrated with their work, with whatever they are doing. They're unable to get particular products. Now, this service gives them what they need. It covers all that, it takes away that frustration. So people like us who are selling convenience, at the end of the day, are simplifying the lifestyles of the people. So I think that's what ICT, that's the way it's helping to help the people, not only in my community, but across the continent.
I had the opportunity to attend a panel discussion, and you were taking part in that particular discussion. And there was a point you made which I hope that you can now elaborate on, because I found it very interesting. You were talking about WhatsApp, and you mentioned that WhatsApp being an American invention, if you will, was being driven from a place. It has a source and it's driven from that place. But then innovations across the African continent, we might be patronizing other innovations from abroad, but are we patronizing locally? Can you talk a little bit about that idea?
For us, the young innovators or the innovators across the entire continent, we are lacking support. The support needs to come from you and me. If I do have an innovation, or if you have an innovation, or if you have a business, anything that you're doing, I need to be the first person to support you. Now, the reason why I used WhatsApp as an example was because across the continent, we have very many messaging applications. But the reason why they've not been, you would ask your question, why are they not being embraced? Because they lack support. I picked an example of M-Pesa in Kenya. M-Pesa has become so successful because of the support it has got from the Kenyan people and mostly from the policymakers. Now that's the Kenyan government. At the time that people now think M-Pesa, it's an innovation of Safaricom. So if you do have any innovation, you need support from your own people to embrace it, to understand you and support you across board, regardless of the challenges that you meet along the way. Because it's okay and good to fail, but we have to learn from our failures. So if you do not support me to prove my concept, if I'm to use my startup as an example, Your Home, the more the people have used the platform, the more it has helped us to make it better.
Certainly as a citizen of Uganda, you are not ignorant of the challenges facing the common man there. Can you speak a little bit about what you've seen in Uganda in terms of the leadership challenges and what you believe young Ugandans can bring to the table in terms of reversing whatever negative trends have manifested over time in Uganda?
There is this popular question amongst Ugandans and people who are interested in Uganda, for example, that what are you young people doing to change the leadership in your country? But there is an underlying question that's always unanswered and not really sieved. It's how prepared are you as a young person to be the next leader? So as long as we answer that question, then we shall be able to have the right leaders. Because most young people, most of those that I've interacted with, are good at criticizing our leaders, cutting across board. But oftentimes, they're not even willing to get into the ring, to pull up their sleeves and getting the work done. What am I trying to mean by this? They are good at talking about these issues, and they are very smart, by the way. They would really articulate all these issues, but they're not offering themselves to be the leaders. So to me, I think that's my concern.
Let me for a moment play the role of contrarian, because some people would suggest that, at least in some parts of the continent, that there are people who are ambitious, not just ambitious, but people who are willing, people who are equipped and ready, but then find themselves oppressed, find themselves limited by institutional and cultural and socio-political structures that don't enable them to break into the positions of authority that will enable them to effect the change they seek to bring. What are your thoughts about that, and what would you say to the young person who encounters such?
Still in the fellowship, on the final day, the presidential summit, that's when the president is coming in. I'm seated in the room, and as privileged enough, by the way, I was on the third row, on the platform where President Obama was going to address us. President Obama walks into the room, everyone stands up, they keep on cheering him, and I did not stand up. I was just overwhelmed. They started singing a happy birthday to him. I did not sing. I was so blown away. because I couldn't imagine myself sitting just a few steps away from the strongest man, most powerful man. It's not the strongest man, most powerful man in the world. I'm in the same room with him, and he's going to address me for the next 1.5 hours. That moment right there proved to me there is no ceiling to my ambitions. I can be anything that I put my mind and efforts to. There is no excuse for a young man to feel underprivileged. By you allowing that in your mindset, that you're underprivileged to these opportunities, you've already limited yourself. Look at Obama's story, where he comes from. How he goes out of the US to live with his mom and stepdad. Then he comes back, he focuses on his education. He wants to transform his communities in Chicago. You know, it shows you he had no limit to himself. He could achieve anything. And in our times, by the way, we are living in great times, he becomes the first black president of the United States of America. And myself, from Uganda, Kampala, I go and I'm able to meet him at no cost on my own. That's what proved to me that all these limitations are self-created.
The East African Regional Conference was one of synergy and impact. While factors such as geography, circumstance, and focus areas vary between young leaders, what evidently unites them together is a collective desire to create a better Africa than the one they met. Next week on the program, it will be our privilege to introduce you to Lois Auta, one of Nigeria's most renowned young leaders and a disability advocate of international repute. You do not want to miss the insights and activities of this brilliant young Nigerian. My name is Ajuri Ngilale. Until next time, lead where you are, and followers will find you.